Mina, you've always had a talent for standing in rooms you don't understand. Lennox Ward, 37, Senior Strategic Liaison for Corwell Development Group and the husband of the woman he'd just insulted, said it without lowering his voice. The Grand Meridian Ballroom on the 42nd floor held 200 guests that evening. Investors, city officials, architects, journalists, board members, and every one of them heard it. Mina Corwell Delacroix, 34, wife of Lennox Ward and the hidden controlling owner of Corwell Development Group through the Corwell Legacy Trust, stood near the window in a simple charcoal dress. Below the glass, the skyline of Chicago spread out like a lit circuit board. Behind her on the stage, the silver model of the Corwell Meridian Tower, the $850 million flagship project her late mother had spent 12 years designing, rotated slowly under the event lights. The logo above the stage read Corwell Development Group in clean white letters. It was her mother's company, her mother's name, her mother's tower. And Lennox was giving away her pen. The same gold fountain pen Adaze Corwell had held when she signed Corwell Development's first major city contract. The same pen Mina had carried in her coat pocket that evening for the heritage exhibit the company had set up near the entrance hall, a small display honoring the firm's founders and early milestone. The same pen engraved along the barrel, A. Corwell, First Foundation. Lennox held it up between two fingers like a prop. Beside him stood Viveka Strand, 35, the stylish CEO of Strand Vantage Consulting and Lennox's mistress, wearing a deep emerald dress with a bracelet that caught every camera flash in the room. Her brother Piers Strand, 38, stood 3 feet behind her, watching Gareth Ward the way a man watches someone he's been promised a favor by. Gareth Ward, 62, Lennox's father and Corwell Development's Senior Director of Urban Project Operations, sat at the head table with a glass of bourbon and the expression of a man who believed the evening belonged to his family. He did not stop his son. He did not even look at Mina when Lennox said the words. Lennox extended the pen toward Viveka. "This belongs in the hand of someone building the future," he said, loud enough for the nearest tables to hear, "not someone decorating the past." Viveka took it, smiled, closed her fingers around the gold barrel the way a person holds something they already believe is theirs. The room shifted, not loudly, a murmur, a tilt of heads, the quiet recalibration of people who had just watched something cruel dressed as sophistication. Mina's throat tightened. For a moment she did not see the ballroom. She saw her mother's hands, the strong, careful hands of Adaze Corwell, lifting that same pen above a contract spread across a folding table in a rented office with a ceiling fan that wobbled every time someone walked past. She had been 11 years old, sitting on a metal chair beside her mother. Adaze had signed slowly, deliberately. "Every line you put your name to is a promise," she had told her. "Don't sign anything you aren't prepared to protect." The memory passed. Mina looked at Lennox, then at Viveka, then at the pen in Viveka's hand. She said quietly, "You're holding the signature that built everything you came here to steal." No one laughed. The comment landed in the room like a key turning in a lock. Small sound, large consequence. Lennox stepped forward, his smile thinning. "You don't belong in this room, Mina." She looked at him for a long moment. "Then let's talk about whose name is on the deed to this room." She turned and walked toward the exit. No shouting, no reaching for the pen, no tears for Viveka to photograph, no spectacle for Gareth to manage. Only the sound of her heels on marble and the quiet understanding of a woman who had decided, somewhere between the moment she saw the pen leave Lennox's hand and the moment it landed in Viveka's, that silence had earned her nothing. Mina had not planned to come to the site office that morning. She had planned to sleep until 7, review the trust attorney's updated filing, and arrive at the gala with enough composure to get through a night she already dreaded. But old habits from her mother were stubborn things. Adaze Corwell had visited the active job sites every Wednesday before dawn, not because the contract required it, not because any executive handbook recommended it, because she believed that a company built by people who worked in the cold deserved a founder who sometimes worked in the cold too. After Adaze died, Mina had continued the visits quietly, using her married name, introducing herself to the younger crews as the architect's daughter, without ever completing the sentence. That morning she stood at the base of the Meridian Tower's lower deck, where the concrete forms were still being stripped from the east foundation wall. The Chicago wind came off the lake sharp and thin, and the sky was still the color of old pewter. 3 crew leads passed her with coffee cups and nodded politely. They knew her face. They did not know her name. Not the real one. Burl McRae, 61, a senior structural foreman who had worked Corwell job sites since before Mina was old enough to read blueprints, crossed the deck and stopped. He removed his helmet. "Mrs. Corwell," he said quietly, using the name she never announced, but that the oldest crews had always known. Mina looked at him. Morning, Burl. He glanced at the foundation wall, at the smooth concrete where his crew had worked through 2 night shifts. Your mother would have wanted to see this in person, he said. I know, Mina said. That's why I'm here. He nodded once and went back to work, and they did not say anything more, because there was nothing more that needed saying. Calder Voss, 44, Corwell Development's internal audit director, found her 20 minutes later near the site trailer. He looked tired in the way people look when they have been carrying information they know they should have delivered sooner. How bad, she said before he could open his folder. Bad enough. He spread 3 pages on the trailer desk. Strand Vantage Consulting had received 3 no-bid referrals through the company's vendor selection process. The referrals had been entered under Gareth's division code, marked as standard client development. The preferred rate applied to Strand Vantage's subcontracting invoice, 17% below market, had been approved by Corwell's finance team under a category normally reserved for legacy partners. Strand Vantage was not a legacy partner. They had signed their first contract with Corwell 9 months ago. 9 months was also roughly when Mina had first noticed Lennox changing his patterns. The late evenings, the turned-down phone, the way he spoke about the importance of the right partnerships at dinner with the rehearsed enthusiasm of someone repeating something they'd been told to believe. Mina read each page once. Has anyone outside audit seen this? Not yet. Keep it that way until tonight. She folded the pages and handed them back. After tonight, I want the full reconstruction on Gareth's approval chain. Calder looked at her for a moment. Inez has the emergency authority draft ready. Mina looked out through the trailer's scratched window at the tower rising above the site. Her mother had drawn the first elevation sketches for that building on the back of a takeout menu. She had kept the menu. It was framed on the wall of the heritage exhibit upstairs in the Grand Meridian. I'll call her tonight, Mina said. She picked up her coat. After I see what Lennox is willing to do in public. She saw what Lennox was willing to do in public. The evening had started with the particular kind of tension that only appears in rooms full of people, pretending not to know what everyone already knows. Mina had arrived with Lennox and watched him scan the ballroom for Vivica within 30 seconds of walking through the doors. She had watched Gareth move toward Piers Strand with the practiced casualness of 2 men who had met privately enough times to have stopped being cautious. She had watched Tally Ward, 31, Lennox's younger sister, and one of Mina's most consistent critics inside the Ward family, lean toward a woman she didn't recognize and say something that made them both glance at Mina's dress and smile. Mina had worn charcoal. She had not worn her mother's ring. She had removed it the day before when Lennox asked, for the first time in 7 years of marriage, whether she thought a simpler look was more appropriate for a professional event. She had not argued. She had placed the ring in its velvet case inside her clutch and told herself she was choosing her battles. She had been choosing her battles for 4 years. That was when she had first noticed the contempt in Lennox's voice when he spoke about her in company settings. My wife doesn't have a head for corporate dynamics, said to an investor at a cocktail party 3 years ago. She had heard it from 20 feet away and chosen to believe he meant it as protection, not erasure. She had gone on believing that longer than she should have. Lennox had come into her life 2 years after Adeza died, during a period when Mina was still learning how to hold the trust together, still managing the relatives who believed her mother's company should belong to whoever was loudest at the estate table. He had been charming in the way of men who understand that a quiet woman who is also clearly intelligent and also clearly hurting can be disarmed by someone who simply pays attention. He had paid attention beautifully. She had married him. She had taken his name publicly. She had kept the Corwell name inside the trust documents, invisible to anyone who didn't already know. She had wanted to find out if he loved Mina the woman, not Mina the owner. She had found out. In the ballroom, before Lennox took the stage to make his remarks, he had arranged to speak through Gareth's introductory slot, which Gareth had approved without checking whether the board sanctioned it. Lennox had asked to hold Mina's clutch. He said he wanted to check whether she had the parking validation she'd need later. He handed it back 30 seconds afterward. She did not check the velvet case. She was watching a photographer move Gareth into position near the tower model. She checked the velvet case 20 minutes later when Lennox was already at the microphone. The ring was gone. Only the empty case remained, sitting inside her clutch, like a room where the furniture had been removed without warning. She was still standing there, holding the open clutch, when she heard Lennox say her name from the stage. Mina and I have taken very different views of what this company needs, he said, and the microphone carried his voice cleanly to every corner of the room. I have tried to be patient with someone who sees this as a legacy to preserve rather than a platform to grow. But growth requires people who aren't afraid of what comes next. He reached into his jacket. Mina knew before she saw it. The gold pen caught the light. There was a sound in the room. Not quite a gasp, something quieter, the collective intake of breath from people who understood they were watching, something they would later describe to people who weren't there. Lennox stepped down from the stage toward Viveka. This belonged to a woman who built something worth building on, he said. That's where it belongs now. That was when Mina said what she said. That was when she walked out. The rain had started by the time she reached the street. It was not heavy, just Chicago rain in early autumn, persistent and cold and indifferent to the occasion. She stood under the hotel overhang for less than a minute. Then she got in the car. She did not cry on the drive because there was no useful moment for tears, and Mina had long ago learned that grief deferred is grief controlled, not grief avoided. She would cry eventually, not tonight. She called Ines Marbury, 47, her trust attorney and the woman who had served as legal counsel for the Corwell Legacy Trust since before Adiez died. Ines picked up on the second ring. I need the emergency authority notice filed before 7 a.m., Mina said. Already drafted, Ines said. Calder sent me the audit summary 2 hours ago. I had a feeling. Schedule the board session for 8. Quorum is confirmed. Ocean has the room. Mina looked at the rain on the window. He gave her my mother's pen. A pause, something quieter. I know, Ines said. I want a property recovery notice prepared. Done by morning. She hung up. The driver took her not to the house she shared with Lennox, but to the original Corwell offices on West Monroe. The building Adiez had renovated from a defunct printing warehouse into a quiet high-ceilinged workspace that still smelled of paper and machine oil in the lower levels. The company had moved to a larger headquarters 4 years ago, but Mina had kept this building under the trust. She came here when she needed to hear her mother. June Pell, 66, the woman who had managed the Corwell family household since Mina was 7 years old, was waiting at the old reception desk with the key to the private archive. She had been present the night Adiez signed the trust papers. She had been present for every difficult thing since. June looked at Mina's bare hand, then her face. He took the ring too. Yes, Mina said. June's expression was not pity. It was something older and less comfortable. Recognition. They went downstairs together into the original file room where Adiez had kept the company's earliest records. Mina knew which box. She had read every document in it twice in the years after her mother died. Once because the lawyers required it, and once because she needed to hear her mother's voice, the only way still available to her. At the bottom of the box, under the original trust certificate and a photograph of Adiez shaking hands with the city's planning commission. In front of the first completed Corwell building, there was a sealed envelope. The writing on the front was her mother's, forward slanting, confident, the handwriting of a woman who had been told her ideas were too ambitious and had decided that was someone else's problem. Mina opened it. She had read the letter before. She needed to read it again. When the day comes that someone mistakes your stillness for surrender, you'll know what to do. Not because I told you, because I raised you to know the difference between keeping peace and giving yourself away. The company was never the gift. You were. The company is just what I built so you'd have somewhere to stand. Mina folded the letter and placed it in her coat pocket. Ines arrived at 11 with the documents. Calder followed with the completed audit report. Ozian Breck, 54, Corwell's board secretary, a man who had served under both Adiez and the trust without ever being asked to choose between them, laid the emergency session packet on the table without commentary. They worked until past 2 in the morning. Then Mina signed her full name for the first time in 6 years on a corporate document. Mina Corwell Delacroix. Ines watched the ink settle. Tomorrow they'll know who they work for. Mina capped the pen and looked at the page. No, she said. Tomorrow they'll know who they betrayed. The lobby of Corwell Development Group's headquarters had not yet fully settled into the morning when the screens changed. One moment, the rotating render of the Meridian Tower, the company logo, a scrolling timeline of project milestones. The black, then white letters across every screen in the building. Emergency board session, controlling shareholder present. A receptionist stopped mid-sentence. 2 people near the coffee station turned simultaneously. In the elevator bank, someone said something short and urgent into their phone. Lennox walked in at 8:15 with Viveka at his side, wearing a fresh suit and carrying the expression of a man who had decided the previous night's events were Mina's shame to carry, not his. He had told someone on the phone that morning, she had heard it through the wall, that Mina would apologize by noon. He saw the screens. "The trust doesn't call emergency sessions," he said to no one in particular. "That's never happened." Gareth stood nearby, jaw set. "She has no authority to." "Mina doesn't have authority," Lennox agreed. "That's the point." Tally came through the revolving doors in a camel coat, looking for someone to confirm she'd heard the text correctly. Piers Strand stood near the window, scrolling his phone with both thumbs. Vivica had transferred the pen to her lapel that morning, pinned at an angle, not quite a trophy, but not far from one. The elevator opened. Enos stepped out first, then Calder, then Ocean, carrying a sealed board packet against his chest, and then Mina. She was not wearing charcoal. She wore black, clean and precise. With the Corwell Company pin on her lapel, the small brass piece in the shape of the original firm crest, the one that had not been worn publicly since Adair's died. Several of the older employees in the lobby recognized it before they recognized her face. A woman from the Heritage Division pressed her hand over her mouth. Burl, who had come in to drop off site documentation, went completely still near the security desk. Mina walked forward without rushing. She did not scan the room for approval. She moved the way her mother had moved through difficult rooms, not like someone arriving at a confrontation, but like someone returning to what already belonged to her. Lennox stepped into her path. "What is this?" The laugh that came with the question had forgotten what it was for. Ines spoke before Mina did. "Mrs. Corwell Delacroix is expected in the boardroom." Lennox turned on the name like it had struck him. "Her name is Ward." "Her legal name is Mina Corwell Delacroix," Ines said. "She is the controlling beneficiary of the Corwell Legacy Trust, which holds majority ownership of Corwell Development Group. Mrs. Ward does not hold corporate authority in this building. Miss Corwell Delacroix does." The lobby went quiet in the way of rooms where everyone has stopped pretending to look elsewhere. Gareth stepped forward. "I have operated this company's Eastern Project Division for 9 years. You cannot simply." "You operated a division of a company whose ownership you never verified," Ines said. "That distinction is about to matter significantly." Lennox looked at Mina. His voice dropped towards something that sounded almost like the voice she had married. "You lied to me from the beginning." Mina looked at him, long enough that the people around them understood she was choosing her words, not searching for them. "No," she said, "I waited to see who you would become when you thought the choice was free." She walked past him, past Vivica, whose hand moved involuntarily toward the pen on her lapel when Mina's eyes passed over it, past Tally, who had stopped performing confidence somewhere between the lobby screens and the elevator doors, past Gareth, who looked like a man watching a building he thought he owned change hands without a single paper being filed in his name. The boardroom doors opened. Mina walked in. The boardroom had 3 glass walls and one that was solid, hung with a large rendering of the Meridian Tower. Every chair at the long table was filled except one, the chair at the head, which Mina took without ceremony. The board rose when she sat, all of them. Lennox came in last. He stood near the back because no chair had been prepared for him. Vivica stood beside him. Gareth took the seat nearest the door. Piers sat along the wall, not at the table. Tally stood between them with her coat still on, like she had not quite decided whether she was staying. Over the next 40 minutes, the room learned what Gareth's division had approved in the previous 9 months. The no-bid referrals to Strand Vantage, the below-market subcontracting rates entered under legacy partner codes, the undisclosed personal relationship between Strand Vantage's CEO and Lennox Ward, a relationship that had begun at a company-sponsored function and had subsequently led to 3 introductions between Vivica and Corwell's senior project managers, the finance records that had been adjusted to obscure the origin of the preferred rate approvals, the calendar entries from Gareth's scheduling system showing private dinners between Gareth, Piers, and Lennox in the 6 weeks before Strand Vantage signed its first Corwell contract. Piers stood up. "This is standard business development." Calder did not look at him. Standard practice requires disclosure of personal relationships between company officers and preferred vendors. The relationship between Lennox Ward and Vivica Strand was never disclosed to the board or the trust. "I'm not a company officer," Lennox said. Ines set a single page in front of him. "You hold a senior strategic liaison designation issued through Gareth Ward's operational budget. You attended 6 board-adjacent meetings in the past year under that designation and received expense reimbursements for client events. The designation confers advisory standing and the obligation of conflict disclosure. Gareth stood. His voice carried the quality of a man who has spent 30 years being authoritative and is only now discovering that authority requires something beneath it. I have served this company faithfully. Whatever Lennox may have— Director Ward, Mina said. He stopped. She had not raised her voice. She simply said his name, and the room responded as rooms respond to weight, not volume. You sat at my family's table, she said. You used my mother's company seal to move contracts that benefited your son's relationship, and you never once asked whose name was behind the trust that kept your department funded. Gareth had no answer. In 9 years, no one had required him to account for himself to anyone in this building. He had operated as if gravity ran toward him. Now it was running the other way, and the room could feel it. Viveka reached up and unclipped the pen from her lapel. She set it on the table. No one told her to. She simply understood. Mina did not reach for it. She let it sit between them and continued. The resolutions were read clearly. Gareth Ward, suspended from all duties as Senior Director of Urban Project Operations pending a full investigation into unauthorized vendor approvals, conflict concealment, and misuse of company designation authority. Lennox Ward's Strategic Liaison designation, company expense account, access credentials, and building clearance revoked immediately. Strand Vantage Consulting's pending contracts, preferred vendor status, and project access frozen pending legal review. Piers Strand removed from the building. The finance officer, responsible for altered category records, placed on administrative leave. Tally, who held no formal corporate standing, said she had stopped looking at the door. Viveka looked at Lennox when the last resolution was read. It was the look of a person who had believed they were holding power and was now holding its absence. You told me she was no one in this company, Viveka said. Lennox opened his mouth, closed it. You told me her silence meant she had nothing. Viveka unclipped her visitor badge and set it beside the pen. That's on me too, she added quietly to herself as much as anyone. Lennox turned toward Mina. The room was very still. Outside the glass walls, the city moved the way cities move, entirely indifferent to the precise moment when one person's story tips over into a new version of itself. Mina. His voice had gone somewhere different. Something real underneath it, maybe. Too late to know what to do with it. Did you ever actually? Yes, she said. She did not let him finish because she knew what he was asking and because she owed him the truth even now. I loved who I thought you were becoming. She held his gaze. When you stopped becoming, you stopped having my protection. Security entered quietly. Gareth's badge was removed from his jacket. The light on the boardroom panel blinked red. He stared at it the way a man stares at a door he has just understood he will not open again. Lennox left without a folder to carry, without an assistant in the hallway, without a company car waiting downstairs. He left the way people leave rooms where they have finally been seen clearly, quickly, and without looking back. The video surfaced before 9. Not from Mina, not from anyone her team had spoken to. Tally's image consultant had sent footage from the gala to a gossip wire contact the previous night, back when she still believed the clip would make Mina look small. By the time the boardroom session ended, the outlet had realized the footage meant something different entirely. By 11, it had been picked up by 2 business publications and a local news station. The clip showed Lennox at the microphone. His words, the pen leaving his hand, Mina's reply, her leaving. The caption beneath it read, he gave his wife's pen to his mistress at the company gala. She owns the building. Earl watched it on his phone in the site trailer and set the phone down without comment. One of the younger crew leads looked over his shoulder and said, Is that the architect's daughter? The one who comes by mornings? Burl put his helmet back on. That's Miss Corwell, he said. Always has been. Enos gave one statement outside the building. She did not mention the affair. She did not mention the pen or the ring or the gala. She spoke about governance, about the trust's responsibilities, about the standard to which a company must hold itself when it carries a founder's name. She answered 2 questions and went back inside. Mina did not speak to reporters. She was in the heritage corridor on the building's 4th floor, where the company's history was displayed in long glass-fronted cases along a quiet hallway. The exhibit had been refreshed recently. New panels, new lighting, new cases. One case near the entrance had been empty until that morning. The records team had placed her mother's pen inside it an hour after the boardroom session closed. The plaque beside it read, Original Signing Instrument, Corwell Development Group's first city contract, held by Adaze Corwell, founder, returned to company history by Mina Corwell Delacroix. Beside the case, the portrait of Adaeus Corwell had finally been mounted with its full name plate attached. Adaeus Corwell, founder, Corwell Development Group. Mina stood in front of it for a long time. June came and stood beside her, quiet the way she had stood beside Mina at her mother's funeral, at the estate proceedings, at every moment that required witnessing and nothing else. She would have wanted you to wear the ring again, June said. Mina looked at her mother's face in the portrait. Adaeus was younger in it than Mina was now. She was wearing the same expressions she wore in the old contract photograph, calm in the way of a woman who has already decided and is simply waiting for the room to catch up. Maybe, Mina said, but not today. When? Mina looked at the pen in the case. The engraving caught the corridor light, clean and clear. When it means something about me, she said. Not something about him. June nodded. She understood the difference. The building continued around them. Phones ringing in the legal suite. Ines directing the investigative handoff. Calder preparing the restructured vendor review process. Ozian recording the morning's resolutions in the official board minutes. Corwell Development Group was still standing. It had been standing before Mina walked into that boardroom, and it would be standing long after the people who had tried to lean on it without earning the right were gone. Mina turned from the portrait and walked back toward the boardroom, where the chair at the head of the table was still hers. She sat down. She opened the first file in the restructuring packet. Outside the glass walls, the city moved, and below the city the lake moved too, cold and certain and older than any of the names on any of the buildings along its edge. She was not there to fill her mother's seat. She was there because the work was not finished, and because she was the one who understood what it had cost, and because a quiet woman who remembers who she is cannot be made small by the people who never took the time to learn her name.